Arrival of the human. The sky above the jungle turned red as the twin suns began to set. Shadows stretched across the sharp rocks and glowing plants. Far in the distance, a loud roar echoed through the trees. Every creature stopped, even the wind seemed to freeze. On a high cliff, a small group of alien soldiers stood still. Their skin was silver blue, their eyes glowing with green light. They were Virant, the strongest warriors of the planet Zarthex, but even they refused to go. Deeper into this jungle, are you sure the signal came from here? One of them asked, gripping his weapon tightly. Kylira, the youngest among them, but also the sharpest, nodded slowly. Yes, that's the place, Quadrant 9G. Deep inside Therox territory, a chill ran through them. No one entered Therox. Land not even the bravest warriors. Therox was the apex predator of this planet. It could crush steel with its jaws and move faster than any eye could follow, and yet someone had dared to go in. A human. 3 days ago, a strange ship had crashed into the jungle. At first, the Viren believed the pilot was dead, but yesterday, the tracking signal reactivated. The source. Inside the Therox zone, Kylira's captain sighed. Let's get this over with. Prepare for combat. They moved carefully, weapons raised, each footstep slow and silent. Glowing insects buzzed around them. Alien birds flew away in warning. And then they saw it, in the middle of a small clearing. A man sat calmly. He was human tall, brown hair, dirty clothes. He looked tired, but not afraid. He was sitting beside a massive beast taller than a tank, covered in black scales. The Therox, every soldier froze. Their fingers tightened on their weapons, but no one fired, because something was wrong. The Therox wasn't attacking. Instead, it was lying on its side, purring softly like a giant cat, and the human was scratching behind its ear. The beast's huge yellow eyes were half closed in peace. Kylira gasped, unable to believe what she saw. The most dangerous creature of their world relaxed and happy beside a human. You tamed our apex predator, she whispered. The human turned his head slowly. He saw the group, raised one hand in peace. I'm not here to fight. He said, my name is Eli. No one answered. They were still staring at the beast. Kylira stepped forward slowly. Eli, how are you alive? She asked. That thing should have eaten you. Eli smiled a little. It tried, he said, but I gave it water, then food, then a name. A name. Kylira blinked. I call her Shadow, Eli said, stroking the creature's head. She was injured. I helped her. The Therox made a soft growl, not a warning, but a sound of comfort. Eli stood up slowly. Teska, keeping a hand on the beast's head. I think she likes me, he said. Or at least, she doesn't want to kill me anymore. The soldiers lowered their weapons slightly. Still unsure, Kylira looked into the eyes of the creature. For the first time, she saw something. Different, not rage, but intelligence. This is impossible, the captain said, shaking his head. No one has ever come back from Therox territory alive. Eli shrugged. Maybe no one tried the right way. He looked around at the group, then pointed to the jungle. There are more of them out there, he said. Bigger, angrier. Then why are you still here? Kylira asked. Why didn't you run? Because Shadow protected me. Eli replied. She's not just an animal. She understands. She remembers. Kylira didn't know what to say. Her whole life, she was told Therox were monsters. Nothing more, but here stood a human, calm and alive, beside one like a friend, behind her. One soldier whispered, he's dangerous. Another added, he's broken the rules of nature. Kylira raised a hand, silencing them. She looked at Eli, then at the beast, then back at the dark jungle. Bring him with us, she said at last, but keep your eyes open. As the soldiers slowly moved forward, the Therox rose too. Its giant form loomed over everyone, but it made no move to attack. It followed Eli silently, like a shadow walking beside its chosen one. And as the group disappeared into the forest, one question echoed in Kalira's mind. If a human can tame the deadliest beast on our world, what else can they do? Asterisk, the cage was too small for a creature that large, yet the Therox didn't growl, didn't fight, didn't even move. It just sat there, still as a mountain, its glowing eyes locked on one person's eye. They had brought him to Outpost 12, a hidden research base in the cliffs. No outsiders were allowed here, and no creature had ever entered alive. But tonight, both a human and a living Therox had broken that rule. Kalira stood behind the glass wall, arms crossed, watching them carefully. The beast could crush the steel cage in seconds, but it didn't. Instead, it waited, calmly, eyes tracking Eli like a loyal guard. This is not science, the chief biologist whispered beside her. This is madness. Eli sat on the floor of the observation room, back against the wall. He was tired, but calm, every few seconds. He would glance toward the cage and nod, and every time, the Therox responded with a soft thrum from deep in its chest. They think she's a monster, Eli said quietly, not looking at anyone.
Oh, but they've never looked at her eyes.
Kalira didn't reply. She remembered those eyes cello like fire, yet somehow gentle when looking at him outside. The night storm began to rise, rain falling like sharp glass on the metal roof. Eli finally turned toward her. Why do your people hate these creatures so much? He asked. They were the first life form here, right? Kalira hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, long before the Viren arrived, Therox ruled the land. We tried to study them, but they attacked our scientists, destroyed our patrols, or maybe, Eli said, you entered their home with guns. The room fell silent. Kalira looked at him sharply, but there was no anger in his face, only curiosity. She let me feed her. Eli continued. She was injured, scared. I gave her water, warmth, trust. That's what tamed her. Kayala frowned. No Viren has ever tamed a Therox, she said. Some believe it's impossible. Eli chuckled softly. Then maybe I'm just too human. Outside, the storm roared louder. Thunder. Shaking the walls, suddenly, alarms began to beep. Red lights flashed across the hall. Kalira rushed to the screen. Security breach, Sector 3. Someone shouted. There's another one. Another Therox. Panic filled the base. Soldiers ran with weapons drawn. Kalira turned to Eli, who was already standing, eyes wide. She's calling for help, he said. They're connected before she could stop him. Eli ran to the door. The Therox inside the cage stood instantly, slamming its body against the steel. Not in rage, but in fear. She knows. Eli shouted, her kind is in danger. Kalira stared at him, then at the beast, then made a choice. She hit the emergency override. The cage door opened with a loud hiss. Gasps filled the room. Soldiers aimed their rifles, but the Therox didn't attack. It ran past them, right behind Eli, like a shadow chasing the wind. Through the rain, through the storm, they reached the cliff edge. Lightning lit the sky, revealing a second beast in the distance trapped in an energy net. Roaring in pain, without a word, Shadow leaped forward. She attacked the trap with claws and teeth. Roaring louder than the storm, Eli followed, shouting commands no one understood, but the beast listened. Within seconds, the second Therox was free. It stood beside Shadow, then looked at Eli with a slow nod, as if it too understood. Kalira arrived just in time to witness the impossible. Two apex predators standing beside a humanoid as enemies. But as equals, rain fell harder. Lightning cracked above them, and Kalira whispered to herself, beast or brother. The council chamber was silent, not peaceful, not calm, just silent. The kind of silence that comes before a storm, high above the city of Vorex Prime. The most powerful minds of the Viren race sat in a circle of black stone. Their faces were cold, their eyes narrow, and in the center, a large screen showed a frozen image, a human, standing between not one but two Therox beasts, alive, unharmed, and looking directly into the camera. "This is not science," one elder said, voice shaking. "This is contamination. He is changing the balance of our world," another added. "Beasts must remain beasts." Kylira stood at the center of the room, feeling their eyes burn into her. Her uniform was soaked from the storm. But she stood tall. She replayed the memory. Again in her mind, lies stepping between two creatures the Viren had feared for centuries. "I was there," she said quietly. "They didn't attack, they protected him. Because he tricked them, someone snapped. Because he used human tech to control them." Kylira shook her head. "No," she said. "He used kindness, laughter." Echoed through the room, not loud but cruel. One elder leaned forward, his voice sharp like a blade. "You're saying a pet trick saved him?" Kylira took a breath. "No," she said again. "I think he taught them something new." The room fell into silence once more. Outside, the skies above Vorex Prime darkened as another storm began to form. Meanwhile, far from the city, Eli sat beside a small campfire deep in the jungle. Shadow rested nearby, her breathing slow and steady. The second Therox, whom Eli had named Stoneback, was curled beside a fallen tree, eyes always watching. Eli scratched notes into his pad with a broken pen. Each line was simple, but filled with wonder. Day 11. The Therox aren't just smart, they're emotional. They feel pain, loyalty, maybe, even love. He paused, listening to the soft growl behind him. Shadow moved her massive head onto his lap, like a giant dog. Eli smiled and whispered, "You miss the stars too, don't you?" But peace never lasts long, especially when fear spreads faster than facts. Back at the military base, weapons were being loaded, orders were being printed, and on every screen, one name flashed in red. Eli Ryder, human threat level, unknown Cholera. Watch the alert and disbelief. She knew what was coming next. "They're sending hunters," she whispered. "They're going to kill him." Her hands clenched into fists. Not because she loved the human, not yet, but because she knew what it meant. They weren't just afraid of the Therox. They were afraid of change. Afraid that if one human could befriend a monster, then maybe the monsters weren't the problem. Kylira made her decision. She activated her ship, turned off her signal beacon, and disappeared into the jungle skies. Because if they were going to hunt the human, she would get to him first. The rain had stopped, but the jungle was still weeping. Drops of water slid off the trees like tears. The air was thick, heavy with tension, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. In the middle of a quiet clearing, Eli stood face to face with death. Not the kind that roared or chased, but the silent kind, the kind that watched from behind a rifle scope. Above him, hidden in the canopy, Viren hunters waited. Their armor shimmered like light on oil. Their weapons aimed directly at his heart. But they didn't shoot, not yet, because something was wrong. The Therox wasn't protecting Eli. It was standing in front of him, exposed, vulnerable, like a living shield. Kylira landed moments later, her ship silent between the trees. She stepped out and saw its shadow standing guard. And Eli, not flinching, not hiding, just placing a hand gently on the beast's side. "She knows," he said without turning. "She knows they came to kill." Kylira raised her voice, sharp and commanding. "Stand down, now," she called. "To the treetops, do not fire." For a moment, nothing moved. Then the jungle responded with silence again. The hunters backed away, confused, reluctant, and gone. Eli finally looked at her. "You're early," he said, a tired smile on his face. You were about to die, Kylira replied, stepping closer, so I rushed. They both looked at Shadow, who was now calm but alert. Kylira moved slowly, carefully, as she stepped beside the beast. Its golden eyes met hers, no rage, no threat, only awareness. She knows me now, Kylira whispered. Surprised by her own words, Eli nodded. She remembers faces, smells, voices. She knows who means harm and who doesn't. Kylira crouched beside the Therox, her hand just inches from its scales. Why you? She asked, not looking up. Why does she trust you? Eli sat down beside her, the firelight dancing in his eyes. I didn't try to control her. He said, I listened, I waited, I treated her like a person, not a problem. That night, Kylira stayed in the jungle camp, not as a soldier, but as a guest, and for the first time, she saw things through human eyes. Shadow and Stoneback took turns patrolling, never wandering far. They weren't just pets, and they weren't tools. They were something more, something older than war. Later, by the fire, Kylira asked a quiet question. Do you think this is a bond? Eli looked at her for a long time, then at the sleeping beasts beside them. No, he said softly. I think it's trust, and that's even stronger. High above them, a drone hovered in silence, recording everything. Back at the Viren capital, the footage streamed live to hidden eyes. Commanders, scientists, and war leaders watched, their fear growing not because of what they saw, but because of what it meant. A human had crossed the line not just between species, but between fear and friendship, and once that line was crossed, there was no going back. It began with a whisper, a soft voice inside a dark room. A general leaned forward and spoke just 4 words. The experiment ends now, 1,000 kilometers away. Eli laughed beside a small fire. He was teaching Kylira how to roast jungle roots. Shadow watched silently, tail wrapped around the camp like a fence. Stoneback was snoring like thunder beside a tree. Kylira tasted the burnt root and made a face. This is disgusting, she said. Eli grinned. You just insulted one of Earth's survival snacks. She raised an eyebrow. And yet, humans survived. Barely, he replied. They were laughing. Until the first shot was fired, the ground exploded behind them. Stoneback roared and charged toward the trees, but before he could reach the edge of the camp, he fell. A glowing dart had pierced his neck. Kylira grabbed Eli's arm, pulling him down. Run now, she shouted. Shadow roared in rage, covering them both with her body. But more darts flew. More shadows moved in the trees. This wasn't a patrol. This was an execution team. Kylira activated her wrist device, calling for her ship. Eli tried to lift Stoneback, but the creature was too heavy. He's still breathing, Eli cried. He's not gone. But they didn't have time. Shadow growled deeply, pressing her massive head against Eli's chest. A goodbye. Then she ran into the forest, drawing the hunters away. Eli screamed after her, but Kylira pulled him back. They'll kill you too, she yelled. You can't save her if you're dead. The ship landed hard, the door already open. They jumped inside as laser fire tore through the jungle behind them. Eli collapsed on the floor, chest heaving. She saved us, he whispered. Kylira nodded, eyes full of guilt. She saved you. They didn't speak for a long time. The jungle below grew smaller as they flew higher, but the pain grew heavier later. That night, Kylira sat alone in the ship's control room. A secret message blinked on her screen from her own commander. Return immediately. The human will be transferred to isolation sector. No contact with him until further orders. She stared at the message. Then at Ali, who was sitting in silence, watching the stars. He had lost his friend, maybe forever. He had trusted her, and now he was a prisoner in her ship. She closed the message, but the words stayed in her heart. This was betrayal. Not by the Therox, not by Eli, but by her own people. And now, she had a choice to make. The ship flew in silence, but inside Eli's heart, a storm had already started. He sat near the viewing panel, watching stars drift by. Somewhere below, Shadow was out there alone, hunted, maybe hurt. He had no way to help her. He couldn't even help himself. Behind him, Kalira stood frozen in front of an old control panel. Its screen was cracked, dusty, unused for years. She had opened it using a secret code, one her family had buried long ago. Hidden in its memory core was something forbidden. Something no Viren soldier was allowed to see. File name: Project Horizon. Date: 210 cycles ago. Status: erased. Access level: lost, but it wasn't erased, not completely. Kalira tapped. A few final keys, and the screen came alive. A video started playing. Not modern, not sharp, but real. It showed humans, not soldiers, not warrior scientists. Standing beside young Therox creatures, not in cages, but in friendship. Children were feeding them. One Therox even let a little girl ride on its back. Eli slowly turned around, eyes widening. "That's Earth tech," he whispered. Kalira nodded slowly, voice low. This was before the war. The video shifted. It now showed explosions, fear, betrayal, Therox being hunted, captured, tortured, humans trying to stop it but losing. The Viren army had wiped out the human outposts and declared the Therox species as dangerous. Kalira sat down, the truth crushing her like gravity. "We erased the history," she said. "We rewrote it." Eli's voice was bitter. "You didn't just rewrite it, you buried it under lies." The lights in the ship flickered, but the old screen stayed on. As if the past was forcing itself to be remembered, Kalira looked up at him. Her voice was small. "My grandfather was a part of it. He helped start the program that turned Therox into enemies." Eli shook his head. "They were never enemies," he said. "They were our friends." Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of answers, painful, powerful answers. Then the ship jolted suddenly. A warning flashed across the controls. "Incoming vessel, ID, Viren command, status, lock on. They've found us," Kalira said, "and they know we know the truth." Eli stood up, fists clenched. "Then we show everyone," he said. "We show them what really happened." Kalira stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled just slightly. "Let's finish what our ancestors started." The sky turned black at noon, not because of nightfall, but because war had arrived. Over the burning treetops of Zarthax, a fleet of Viren warships circled like vultures. Their cannons were aimed at one place, a single mountain cave, glowing with ancient lights. Inside that cave stood two fugitives, one human, one alien, and the truth. Eli adjusted the signal amplifier on his backpack. "If this works, every screen on this planet will see the footage," he said. Kalira nodded, her fingers flying across the controls. "It has to work," she whispered. "If we fail, they won't just kill us. They'll erase the truth forever." Below them, buried inside the glowing walls, ancient symbols. Lit up, the Therox sanctuary, the last untouched place of their kind, was awakening. Outside, the ground began to shake. The jungle itself parted, and from the shadows stepped a legend. Shadow, scarred, limping, eyes burning like twin suns. She had returned. Eli rushed forward, kneeling. "You made it back," he breathed. The beast lowered her head, pressing against his chest gently. She was tired, but she had come home. A deep growl rumbled behind her. Stoneback had returned, too wounded, but alive. Kalira looked out at the enemy ships preparing to strike. can't stop them all, she said. No, Eli replied. But we can show the world why they should. He pressed the final switch. The projector burst to life. Holograms floated high into the sky across cities, across bases, across every screen in Viren space. The lost footage, the real history, the betrayal, and the truth that Therox were never monsters. They were survivors of a war they never started. The people watched in silence. Some cried, some broke their weapons, some just sat down and whispered one word. Why? But the generals on the ships above gave no time for questions. One of them shouted, "Target the cave," just before the command could be completed. A roar tore through the clouds, louder than thunder, older than words, full of rage and heartbreak. And power, Shadow leaped from the ledge. Her cry echoed across mountains. Dozens of other Therox answered from the jungles. They had been hiding, but now they rose, not to destroy, but to defend. The battle was not clean, not beautiful, but it was honest. Eli fought beside them. Cholera led a group of rebel pilots who turned against their own commanders. Stoneback crashed through tanks like glass, and Shadow She roared again, louder, shaking the skies. At the peak of the battle, as fire rained from the sky, Eli stood on a rock, signal beacon in hand. He looked directly at a war drone and said the final words of the broadcast. You called them monsters, but monsters don't protect. They don't trust. They don't forgive. You did this, and then he dropped the beacon, letting the world hear the roar one last time. Epilogue: the war didn't end that day, but the lie did. Therox were no longer hunted. Eli was no longer seen as an intruder. And Kyalira became the first Viren ambassador to say sorry. Shadow never returned to the wild. She stayed where the stars could see her, beside the human who gave her something no one else ever had: a choice.